So now we're looking at combining ratios. So this is when we have something kind of in red where it's A to B, and we have something where we can compare B to C. So we're comparing two ratios, or combining two ratios when one quantity is in both. So for our first example, we're going to go through, we're going to talk about fruits in a supermarket, right? So in a supermarket, there are 5 apples to every 4 bananas. And there are also 12 oranges to every 8 bananas. So we want to write the above as one ratio, right? So the very first thing we always have to check, and sometimes we don't do these checks when we're actually learning the topic about how to spot, but there's and we write it as one ratio, so we're going to try and write it. So we have to find what's similar, right? So that this, what's similar? Well, we have bananas in each, right here. So step 1 is we want to write the ratios above / below each other so that the similar quantity is in a vertical line. Okay, so before we do that, I just want to give a little bit of labels so I don't have to write out apples, bananas, and oranges. So here, what this actually means for step 1 then is this. We are going to write out I'm going to write out a little bit like this. A to B, okay? And then also B to O, because that's really what we're given, right? Now I'm actually going to start filling those in. So beside it, because I want to leave it like that, and I want to just leave my numbers elsewhere, so make it a little bit easier for me to read. So here, how am I going to do that? Well, that's 5 to 4. And here we have 8 to 12. Right? Just picking out the numbers and putting them in their places. Well, how can we write this as one ratio? Well, the only way is if our middle values here, if they match, we can do that. Well, how can we make those match? Well, we can multiply or divide one of the ratios to find a value where they match. So we can either, I always like to multiply just because it makes it easier. If you can see that you can divide, that's great, but multiply is always going to work to nicer numbers. So let's do multiply. So here, I'm going to take the top row and I'm going to multiply each value by 2 so that our bananas are 8. So here, I'm going to go 5 times 2, and that's going to be 4 times 2, right? So this is going to give me 10 to 8, and the other one is 8 to 12. So there's no reason now that the middles meet, I just am moving my 12 up there. So at the end, we can write them in one form as 10 to 8 to 12. And then afterwards, this is where when you multiply, you're going to be always going to have to simplify. But chances are it'll be something nice and easy where it's all even. And you can divide all this by 2. And we can see that we get 5 to 4 to 6. That would be full marks, depending, and no matter what the question asks. So let's go through example 2. So we have A to B. This I kind of dropped a lot of the stuff and just gave you the nitty gritty. So A to B is 3 to 4. So A to B, 3 to 4, and then we're going to have B to C. So A to B is 3 to 4. And then B to C is 12 to 17. So how are we going to go from one ratio to the other? Well, from here to here, I can times by 3. So that means I'm going to do 3 times by 3 and 4 times by 3 for that top ratio. And that's going to give me 9 to 12. And the other ratio I'm going to write below is 12 to 17. So I'm just going to, in the end, move my 17 up to that top ratio. So I can write it as 9 to 12 to 17. And we'll do one more. So example 3, green marbles to red marbles is 4 to 11. So we have G to R, and green to blue is, so we have another one that's green and blue. So we're going to have green, and then I'm putting blue over here. So even though it looks a little different, it's still the same, right? So now how did those values go? I had 4 to 11. That one didn't change, but we swapped the order of the other one. Green to blue, we did blue to green. So green, keep in mind, I swapped them around. Green over here is 22, and over here it's 10. Right? So red, and I can spot my mistake that I didn't practice what I preached. I didn't swap my values around as I wrote them. So you should actually have the 10 here and the 22 here. Okay, so in the case where they don't actually line up, or we can't actually find something that multiplies nicely, it might be nicer to try and simplify both of them or multiply both of them by something. Okay, so one method that you can do is just multiply this by 10 and this by 4, right? So I took this up there and this down there. I sometimes call this that I cross multiply, and then to simplify we're going to divide. So cross multiply and then divide so we can simplify our answer. But this always works. This method always works. So here it's just a longer process. Top, we're going to get 4 times by 10 to 11 times by 10, which is going to result in 40 to 110. Right? And then the bottom one, we're going to get 22 times by 4 to 10 times by 4, which is going to give us 88 to 40. Okay, so 88 to 40, and then let's write them over top of each other. So 40 to 110, and back this way over to 88. And it's always nice to provide the reader with, okay, what are these actual numbers? Well, these are, our blue is 88, our 40 is our green, and our 110 is our red. Whoops, didn't actually have to write red, just R. Okay, so here are now 5 questions for you to practice. Once you are ready, press play, and we will go through. Okay, so doing these, A to B, we're going to set that up as 3 to 4, and B is my similars, so I'm going to stack it 2 to 7. I'm going to see that I can multiply this one by 2, and so we're going to get 3 to 4, 3 to 4 to 14, and that's A to B to C. Okay. Next one, we're looking at 2 to 5, and E is 3 to 5. Okay. So here, I'm going to multiply this one by 3, multiply this one by 5, and so we're going to get 6 to 15 to 25, and we can't actually simplify that, but we should still write our A to B to C. Show them that's what our ratio is representing. So next one, we're doing 6 to 1, and that's G to H. And then H is 6, and then 1 over here, right? So this one, I'm going to multiply the top by 6, and so we can get 6 times 6 is 36, 36 to 6 to 1, that's G to H to I. And I apologize, I just noticed problem with my last one. I said A to B to C. It should have been D to E to F. So if you caught that, well done. So question 4. Looking at this one. So we have 36 to 18 is J to K, and then K to L is 6 to 12. So 6 to 12. So we could either multiply or divide here. I'm actually going to choose to divide, and because we haven't done a divide so far, we'll get the same answer as long as we simplify. But we haven't actually done division yet. So here, I can divide by 3, and I notice that'll match up. So 36 divided by 3 is simply 12. 18 divided by 3, that's our 6 we wanted. And then our last number over here is 12. So if I simplify this down by dividing by 6, my end answer is going to be 2 to 1 to 2. And that is JKL. J to K to L. Sorry. J to K to L. And lastly, question 5, M to N is 5 to 12. So 5 to 12. And then N to O is 132 to 573. So in these instances, there's sometimes no real good way to look at them and go with, besides just kind of laughing, going, oh, this is just going to be a really long-winded process. So, but they usually have a little trick of how you can relate them. So, I noticed that 132 is in my 12 times tables, so I'm going to times the top here by 11. And so I can write it as 55 to 132 to 573, and that's M to N to O. And this, can we simplify this? Well, what are the numbers that make up 55? That is what I'd check first. Check your easiest number. Well, the factors of 55 are 1, 5, 11, and 55, right? So we notice that the 1 doesn't matter. 55 is not going to go into 573. We know 5 doesn't go into 573 because it doesn't end in a 5 or a 0. So the only one that we ever have to check is simply the 11. And one thing that you can do for yourself if you want to check is you can do 573 divided by 11, or you could even use approximation, right? But what you're going to find is that it's going to be just over 50. So, and then therefore it doesn't simplify.